Hi, welcome to this new course on learning C Sharp. We'll break this course into sections. This first section, we're just going to talk broadly about the course and not dig into the language so much. But yeah, let's go. So when you do this course, I expect you to have some prior knowledge. I expect you to have done some programming with another language, just some basic programming. Most importantly, you need to sort of have some understanding of conditionals like if and case and things like that. Have some understanding of loops like, the for loop and the while loop, stuff like that, so that you can follow along with the code. And finally, some understanding of functions, methods, or procedures. So you should have an understanding that when we have a large problem that the program wants to solve, we're probably going to approach creating the program by breaking the problem down into bite-sized chunks, basically a series of methods, which is a series of, I guess, sub-solutions, and each sub-solution is strung together or works together to produce the overall solution. And each method or procedure should have really well-defined inputs and really well-defined outputs. We don't need Python, by the way. You could have started with some other language. It's just at this school we tend to use Python. All right, so C Sharp, it's a very powerful language. It's a very mature language, one that's been around for a couple of decades now. It's flexible, it's easy to code in, and the language itself gives you a lot of facilities that makes your job just easier as a programmer. Now, it was developed by Microsoft, so obviously it runs on Windows machines, pardon me, but it can run on most computer platforms, and that includes Mac and Linux. And so in our classes, there will be some Mac people, some Windows people. It's a little different. The environments are a little different between Mac and Windows, but we can definitely both follow along this course and learn C Sharp together. Okay, you can create lots of different types of programs. So we previously had some experience with our Python programming of doing some terminal programs, right? So you remember the black sort of terminal, the black box that's basically just character based. We don't have to worry about the cursor and buttons and things like that. It's just character based. And we can do those. They're the simplest and good way to learn. But we can also step up and start creating complex GUI based applications. GUI stands for graphical user interface. And here you can have like all sorts of fields and buttons and all sorts of widgets that you can put on your screen that can help you, I guess, present a slick, interactive front end for the user to interact with. It can also create web-based applications, which we'll be looking at. And quite interestingly, it can combine GUI-based applications with web-based applications, which we'll be looking at as well. And finally, this point down the bottom here can be thought of as a compiled language. Now, we're not going to get into this in a lot of detail. It's actually not quite a compiled language, but for our purposes, we can consider C# a compiled language. What does that mean? It means that before we run a C# program, we hand the code that we've created over to a thing called a compiler, which is a program, and it converts the entire program into a format that's sort of binary based that the CPU can understand. It actually goes through an intermediate language that we're not going to touch here in this course, but you can think of it basically as being pre-compiled, as in pre-processed, the entire program pre-processed before we press the run button, so that it should run very quickly. This is opposed to, say, Python, which is an interpreted language. And so what happens when you run a Python program is that it converts one line at a time into CPU type language. So this should mean in theory that C# should run a little quicker than Python. Okay, the other term you're going to come across with when we're doing C# is something called .NET. .NET, you can read the definition here. Basically, it's a bunch of tools that Microsoft put out. They're free, they're cross-platform, they're open source, and they're basically libraries and editors, all different sorts of things, bits and pieces that you need to create applications to run on the web, mobile, desktop games, Internet of Things, and more. So .NET supports more than just C#. So .NET also supports many other languages, right? So Visual Basic would be one example. All we care about is that .NET is installed on your computer so that you have facilities that allow your C# program to run. All right, that's the end of the first topic. We'll come back next topic and learn some more about the environment that we need to set up on our computers to get us into C sharp.